and greetings, y'all. Deja Serenidad here again on this beautiful Costa Rican rising. Thank you for being present with me today. I am going to talk to y'all about what inner child healing is and a few ways that you can start to do it. I've made a couple of videos about this in the past, but they was so long ago. It's time for a refresh. It's time to put it out there for any new people who are following me or who find me through searching about inner child healing. So, like I said, my name is Deja, and I have been deep diving into my own inner child healing and helping others since I really say the very beginning of 2020 is when I started to share it with others. But throughout 2019 was when I discovered, I was already doing it, but I discovered the term inner child healing in 2019 just through doing my own research. I experienced things in my childhood that I knew I needed to heal. I knew I needed to release. I knew that it was affecting me in the present moment, things that had happened many, many years prior. So as I started to do shadow work and healing work around that, let me help my cat real quick. Okay. Yes, so as I started doing just personal shadow work, looking into my shadows, looking into my triggers, looking into the things that hurt me the most and how they were affecting me, I started doing research, like watching a lot of videos like about psychology online. And I came across this woman who was talking about inner child healing. And I was like, that's it. That's the term that I've been needing. That's what this is. The person who I'm dealing with, who I'm healing right now, is my inner child. And as soon as that term came into my reality, it has been literally a part of my everyday life. So I started delving deeper in, doing research on the inner child, how a lot of our behavior is developed in childhood. A lot of our behavior, of course, comes from the mirrors that we experienced in childhood, which is our parents. So oftentimes we repeat cycles and patterns that we witnessed in our parents or other close family members. And even we'll repeat things that we actively did not like and wished wouldn't have happened. We will often still repeat those patterns because on a subconscious level, we're being programmed. So once I realized this, I started working on myself. In January of 2020, I hosted my very first inner child healing workshop. It was a 6-week program. I had 6 women join me. And actually, I think we had 1 man on the first day because it was also open to people to join just one, but I had 6 people who stayed with me consistently for the 6 weeks. But anyways, it was also a writing workshop because in college I studied creative writing and sociology, and I like journaling, I like poetry, I like writing stories, and this is actually something that I realized, this is a way that I've been healing throughout my lifetime. So since I was a little girl, throughout all of the different traumas and experiences that I had, I always was writing poetry about my experiences. And I collected a lot of old poetry, so I've been able to see poetry that I've written like back in middle and high school, and I can see like so many dark emotions, so many deep emotional processes, but at the very least, I took them and I put them on the page. So this 6-week workshop was a writing workshop. So every week, we talked about some aspect of the inner child, and we had one writing activity that then the people could do kind of like as homework, inner work, to then share as well with the collective. And it was really fun, really beautiful. I want to host one again. It's been hard for me to host one again because I don't live with Wi-Fi anymore and timing. People want to meet at night mostly, and at night I have no way to get Wi-Fi. So hopefully one day I'll be able to host one of those again. But anyways, it was a beautiful workshop. And after that, I started offering one-on-one sessions with people. So since then, I've been doing one-on-one sessions. I've also had several group workshops. I was able to do one early this year for International Women's Day at a small women's gathering. And I had over 50 people participate. This was something that I gifted. I wasn't paid for this offering. It's just I really love to do this, and I was offered to come and share some inner child work with my community, and that was fully in Spanish and English because we had Spanish speakers and English speakers at the gathering. So that was really fun. And I also got to do a group inner child healing session at the local high school, which was very, very special, and that was completely conducted in Spanish. So I have really expanded within this realm. This is my offering of choice. This is my passion. It is my focus. It is the main thing that I do. I also host retreats here in Costa Rica, and all of my retreats are inner child healing retreats. So all of my guests end up doing workshops with me. We also do a psilocybin ceremony, which I like to use that medicine for, in honor of and in support of healing the inner child. So just to give y'all some background, I really love this work. So let's talk a little bit more about what inner child healing is. I think the name speaks for itself. If you are an adult person, I will say like 21 years or older, 22 or older, you're now in your adulthood, whether it be early, middle, or late adulthood, or for some people they become elders. Everyone has an inner child. Basically, the beginning of our life, we are children. I'm including also teenhood in this. Okay, so for me, when I do inner child work with people, I look at ages 1 to 21, because that is the time where we're like developing our brains. It's the time where we're developing our chakra system. That's the time where we're developing who we are. But by like around 21, usually there's like a full person formed, and that will be carried with you more so throughout your life. Of course, there are changes throughout this time, but that chunk is what I look at from being a baby to being 21. And I look at 7-year cycles. So every 7 years, we have some changes that occur. You may have heard this before, but like your body is regenerating itself. The cells are always regenerating. So every 7 years, all of your cells have regenerated from the last 7 years. So like your body is like, it's been reborn. You know, it's happening slowly, but every 7 years, your cells are regenerating. Every 7 years, we have a shift in Saturn and a shift in Uranus, the planets. And specifically with Uranus, like these are like generational shifts. 7 years is actually more like a generation. Sometimes people look at it at 10, but it's like it's really set every 7 years. Uranus has a certain placement which affects the collective. I think Pluto shifts every 10 years, which is another like generational planetary shift. So as far as astrology, Uranus, it rules transitions and changes. So every 7 years as a collective, there are large shifts taking place energetically. Sometimes you sense it, sometimes you don't. But when you think back, don't you remember how, 2008 felt different than 2015? There are differences. Something about the music is changing. Something about the children, the teenagers, like something about the culture is like a little different. People are dressing differently. There's new trends. A lot of trends will last about 7 years before new ones come through. So on a higher level, everything we're seeing above, we're also seeing in here. We're seeing in outer space, we're also seeing in inner space. So every 7 years, there's a shift within us. So I look at 7-year cycles. The first 7 years, from being a baby to being a 7-year-old child, is the most important time to look at when we're looking at the inner child. Everything else is important too. Like, then going from 8 to 14 and then 15 to 21. These 3 7-year cycles are the ones that I like to look at. But this first one is very vital because during this first cycle, we're not yet, we become conscious during this cycle. We become conscious of ourselves usually when we're like maybe 4 or 5 years old. Like, I exist. So it happens during the first cycle. But what also is happening during the first cycle is we're sponges. We're learning language. We're learning how we fit into the world. We're understanding, we're being socialized. So I guess that relates to how we fit into the world. There's so much that we learn in that first 7 years. That's our foundation. And a lot of early programs can slip in here because kids are sponges. They learn so much so fast. And it's not until after this first 7-year cycle that we then start to project outward. So the first 7 years, like, we're mostly taking it in. We start to have a voice, you know, probably, like I said, like 4, 5, 6 years old. Kids start to maybe like respond and ask questions and these types of things. So there is some of that happening, but it's like we're mostly taking in information. And then 8 to 14 is when we're putting a lot more out. We're going to see a lot more creative expression during this time because we now have a foundation for the self. So now we're exploring a lot more. We're trying to figure out who we are. Especially then, and then during this time is when puberty comes, this 8 to 14. By the time we're around 11 and 12, we're understanding more our sexuality. And you might understand your sexuality sooner, but especially like for young women, at least, we start to menstruate at this time. Like little boys' bodies start to change at this time. Like our bodies start to change. So we start to shift out of the young childhood and into that teenhood, which does feel distinctly different. And then we have the shift when we're 15 to 21. This is when we now think we know it all. We now think we really know ourselves, and we're moving quite differently. We're moving with a lot more independence, a lot more straightforward. This is a time we start to think about what we want to do for the rest of our lives. We're already thinking like, oh yeah, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a teacher. I want to move to Costa Rica, live off the grid like Deja. This is when we start to figure ourselves out a lot more. We're a lot more conscious at this point. We've taken in so much information at this point. So this is just to give you an idea of these are the 7-year cycles that I look at when it comes to inner child healing. So something I do with my clients is one of my main activities that I'll do, especially on a first session with someone, is, okay, let's look at these 3 cycles. Let's start with 1 to 7, 0 to 7, but really 1 to 7. I mean, you don't really have memories for those first couple of years anyway. Just take a moment to think about that time in your life. What did your child self feel like? What did they endure potentially? Some of you may have had a really loving, safe, warm, cozy childhood, parents who love you, a safe place to be, always fed, your needs were being met. So then there may not be much healing there. It may just be, so much gratitude, so much love for this time. But for some of us, there might have been some sort of trauma or experience that was scary or painful that happened during this time. And because it happened while we were so young, we didn't yet know how to process. We just experienced emotions. We didn't always know how to process them and understand them and move forward. So, for example, when we're hurt in childhood, it can become like this dense energy that then we hold in our heart or wherever we hold it in our body, in our mind maybe. But some of these things people literally won't process for the rest of their life. They'll keep pushing it down, keep avoiding it. Whenever it's even slightly touched, it's so painful and they're so triggered. People will carry this stuff to their deathbed if they don't choose to process and release. So inner child healing is the act of reviewing this time, remembering your child self and your teen self and saying, was there anything that happened then that I'm still carrying now? Was there anything that happened then that hurt me so much that it shifted my behavior? Do I not trust people because there were people I couldn't trust in my childhood? And ultimately, that's not serving me, because what do I really want? Both from my child self and my current adult self. Well, I want to be loved and supported. I want to be able to trust people. So I have to go back and I have to heal. I have to forgive. I have to send love to that part of myself that's still hurt, that's still scared, that feels like they can never trust anyone ever again. And I have to go to that little part of myself and hug them and hold them and say, hey, that was so unfair what happened to you. I know how much that hurt you. And it's time to let it go. And I love you and you are safe now. And everything still worked out for you even though that happened. That's inner child healing. It's telling our child self everything that they need to hear. It's giving the child self what they needed and potentially lacked. It's a beautiful journey too, because as you look back on your childhood, you'll see the things that maybe were hurtful, but you'll also see all of the joy and the play and the love that was wrapped around it. So oftentimes, you could have 10 beautiful experiences and one traumatic experience, and you will go on only remembering that traumatic experience. And it will cloud those 10 incredible, joyful experiences. Because the trauma part was so scary and you don't want it to happen again, you'll be so scared. Oh, I've been traumatized and that might happen again. But what about all of the joy that was around it? What about all those moments of play? Each of us have a unique childhood, and I honor and I acknowledge that. Maybe you really had a very difficult child and teenhood. Maybe you experienced a lot of abuse and mistreatment. This is true for some people. But there's always moments, there's always little moments of joy, little moments of calm, little moments of understanding. And those are an important part of inner child healing too, to revitalize those, to revive those, to remember that sometimes things were okay. Sometimes I was okay. Sometimes my mom was really mean and she was yelling at me and really hard on me and really critical of me. And sometimes she baked cookies. Every now and then she did. We get jaded sometimes from our experiences and we create a more negative story. When in reality, there were good parts of the story. I've done this for myself. A lot of my inner child healing journey has been healing my relationship with my mom. I hated my mom during teenhood. I loved her in childhood. Then some hurtful things happened. It wasn't even her hurting me. I just felt like she needed to be my protector and she wasn't able to. And so then in teenhood, when I started to because really in teenhood is when we first start to reflect on childhood. And that can make or break teenhood. Because in teenhood, you start to think about how you've been treated all your life and you're like, what is going on around here? I actually need more love. I need more respect. I need to be able to have my voice. It has been stifled. So that's why we'll see a lot of rebellion in teenhood. This is when we're going through puberty. Again, we're starting to feel like we're our own person. And we're like, hey, wait a minute. Why are people treating me this way? We start to understand boundaries and different things. So I remember in my teenhood, I started reflecting on my childhood and being like, my mom is kind of strict and kind of critical and I don't like it. And so I started to rebel. In my rebellion, I was being really mean to my mom. And I thought that I was justified because she had been mean to me. But then later in my adulthood, as I'm healing my inner child, my inner teen, and I'm reflecting on my relationships that need healing, like my relationship with my mother, I'm like, I was mean to her too. Actually, I just repeated that pattern and I didn't have any compassion for her whatsoever. As much as I wanted her to have compassion for me, I was not showing her any compassion. So now as an adult, I'm like, this story that I've been holding, oh, I had a really strict mom. She was so mean, blah, blah, blah. That story has completely changed because now I know, oh, there was more to it. There was stuff happening in the unseen that I wasn't aware of, that I'm aware of now, that changes my entire perspective on the situation. I go really into depth about this. I have a 3-part inner child healing series. It's up on my Patreon and on my TikTok series. It's 3 in-depth videos talking about how you can heal your inner child. And the second video is all about forgiveness, where I talk a lot about this. But yeah, y'all, this is basically what it is. It's just finding where we need love, where we need release, where we need healing. It's healing our relationships with our parents and our family. And even when I say healing relationships with parents and family, I understand some people had really abusive situations. And I don't advocate that you need to have people back in your life if these are people who are going to do harm to you still to this day. But still, the forgiveness part is for you. And it will allow you to still move on and not carry that baggage into your current relationships. Because the relationships we had in childhood are always reflected in the relationships we have in adulthood. Doing shadow work, doing self-reflection, tapping into your spirituality is just an opportunity for you to understand yourself more. Why you do the things you do. And some of the things you do, maybe you can stop doing. Maybe some of the things you do are hurting yourself or even hurting others. Maybe there's things you want to do, but you don't know how, and you just haven't been able to do them because there's been blockages in the way. So this is also a process of releasing those blockages. Healing the heart, opening the heart so you can still love. Having healthy, prosperous relationships, not just romantic relationships, but also friendships. This is what healing the inner child does. And also for some of us, it's allowing your inner child to still be present. Sometimes we forget the inner child as we become adults. We think, I can't be like a child anymore. I have to be more serious now. Don't take life so serious all the time. That's the thing. The thing is, our child self also had so many gifts. Our child self had all of the things that made them so vibrant and so pure and so innocent and so open, so willing to learn. Along the way, some of us lost those things. Inner child healing is also going back and picking up the things that we left behind that we actually could still use. Remembering to be curious, remembering to have fun, remembering our resilience, not taking things too seriously, letting things go, going to sleep and waking up and it's a new day, it's a new world, each rising. So yeah, this is inner child healing. This is what I love. It's what I love, it's what I love, it's what I love. If you want to know more, you can check out my Patreon series or the TikTok series, all about the inner child. That's 3 videos, over an hour of content. And also, I have an ebook called The Inner Family. And this is all about how we need to balance out our inner parents and our inner child as a part of inner child healing. This is available on my website for just $12. And I also am booking one-on-one inner child healing sessions. So check out my website, IHopeYouFindSerenity.com. Book a session with me. I'll send you an email to get an intake form, get a little information about you so that I can, specialize the session to you and your needs. So thank you for listening. I hope you find serenity. Hope you find serenity.